Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. Welcome to my channel. My name is Amy and welcome to my little cozy bookish corner of the internet. So in today's video we are going to go through my top 10 books of 2023. Now I read 28 books, pretty sure it's 29 books, and it wasn't difficult to narrow down my top 10. I had a lot of 5-star reads in 2023, but I wasn't in the habit of tracking my reading or rating my reading. I just wanted to get back into reading books, and I am a mum of 2 children. I was pregnant all through most of 2023 from March through to November, so reading kept me occupied when my son was at preschool and I wasn't at work. And I had countless hospital appointments as well. So reading really got me through waiting around in hospital waiting rooms. So I did a fair amount of reading. I think 28 books, so nearly 30 books in my first year of getting back into reading is pretty good going. So let's jump into my top 10. So 1, these are in no particular order. And 2, some of these I do not have because I borrowed them from the library. If you can hear a lot of groaning in the background, that is my youngest son who is 2 months old. He's currently asleep in his car seat because I dropped my husband off and my son at preschool this morning. So yeah, these are in no particular order. Some of them I have learned from the library, some of them are physical books that I have. So yeah, let's jump right in. So number 10 is The Witches of Vardor by Anya Bergman. Now, I think this was one of the first books I read last year, and I'm really, really happy that I did. This was my first 5-star read of 2023, and it reminded me so much of winter as well, and just the writing. You really felt immersed in 17th century Norway, which is when the book is set, and even though some of the characters aren't very likeable, so you go through 3 different characters' point of views, and one of the characters isn't very likeable. At least I didn't find her very likeable, but I still found ways of empathising with her because of the way her story was written. And it's definitely a book that invokes a lot of emotion and definitely a lot of frustration, because it's about witch trials in Norway in the 17th century, where even something as simple as dancing or saying the wrong thing would get you tried as a witch. And it's just so frustrating how women who wanted to be different were treated that way. And I think a book that invokes that much emotion, that much frustration, that much anger, that much sadness, but yet that much satisfaction at the end of the book, it's definitely a fantastic read. And if you want a bit of woman power in a book, I would definitely recommend The Witches of Vardor. Number 9, now these are 2 books together because I couldn't pick between the 2, they were both as good as each other, and that is Daughter of the Pirate King and Daughter of the Siren Queen by Tricia Levenseller. I could not pick between either of these 2, they were absolutely fantastic. So you follow the point of view of Alossa, who is a 17-year-old captain of her own ship, and she is the daughter of the Pirate King, who is very, very renowned and very feared among the seas. And in the first book, it's more the adventure side of things, which I really, really enjoyed. And there's a bit of a romance in there, there's a bit of discovering, like Alossa discovering herself in that book and finding out what she's capable of. And then the second book is more about her finding her true self and who she actually is and who she is the daughter of. And she ends up, big spoiler alert, she ends up finding her mother, who she thought was on this island where only sirens live, and she ends up finding her on her father's ship. So big twist, and there's just, I love it so much. And I can't wait to read the third. I really can't. It's currently on my physical TBR, which I am going to do a video about because I do have quite a big TBR to read this year. So that's probably going to be the next video I film. But yeah, those two books, they are just, if you want adventure and you love reading books about pirates, then I would definitely recommend those two books. Number 3, now I do actually have a copy of this book. I've only got I've only got 4 books out of 10 that I have physical copies of, but number 8 is Verity by Colleen Hoover. Now, I had seen this all over social media. My friend bought me this for my birthday. Oh my god, I was feeling so much emotion in this book. I was telling my husband all about it. He's not into reading at all, really, but I was telling him the plot of this book and his jaw dropped. Just the suspense, the thrill. I read this in a day. I could not put it down. It's very easy to read. I didn't find it difficult at any point. The plot was difficult because there's a lot of different topics in there that definitely need a trigger warning, I would say. But I read this in a day. I could not put it down, and it's definitely worth a read if you want some kind of thrillery book. I'm so sorry for that lighting behind me. It's the only bad thing about having a window that big. But definitely read this if you want some suspense, some thrill, and a jaw-dropping twist. Number 7, also a book with a jaw-dropping twist, is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This was one of those books where I was like on the edge of my seat thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? And honestly, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I think I read that in about 2 days, and I was just there like gripping onto the book so tight. And there's not a lot of books that invoke that kind of reaction out of me because I just want to know what happens next, what's the twist. And I was very satisfied with the ending, and I feel like the book came to a good close, and it was a very good ending. But yeah, I'm not going to give too many spoilers away. I just couldn't put it down, and it was just, I just constantly was wanting to know what happened next. When you got into the thick of the book, you thought, oh my god. And it is quite scary as well. It does invoke a lot of those feelings of being scared, of like the man under the bed and the bogeyman and things hiding in your wardrobe, and it invokes all of those fears you have as a child. And in a thriller book, it's kind of strange because I always find thrillers to be more of a grown-up book. Like, they invoke like grown-up feelings, not those feelings of being a child again and being terrified that something's going to jump out from under your bed and grab your feet while you're asleep. But that book definitely evoked that for me, and I did struggle sleeping afterwards. Number 6 is God Killer by Hannah Kaner, and this was just a fantastic book. And the second book, Sunbringer, comes out in a couple of weeks, and even though I don't have a physical copy, I will probably be buying a physical copy of both because I loved it that much. And I find Kissen, the main character, such a frustrating woman and she's definitely a woman with a lot of layers, and there's a lot more to her than meets the eye, I think, from the first book at least, because you do find out a fair amount about her at the start of the book, but then it tends to focus more on Elagast and, for the life of me, I can't remember, Inara, that's it. Inara. Those are the other two main characters in the book, and it tends to focus more on their part of the story, and Kissen is just kind of in the background. So I'm hoping in Sunbringer we do delve a bit more into Kissen's character, but she is basically a god killer for hire, like a god bounty hunter, which I think is really cool. But then she meets Inara, who has a god attached to her. So she can't kill this god that is attached to Inara because she will kill Inara in the process. And I think the god is called Skidig, and he's a little rabbit with antlers. And I find him very cute, but very frustrating the further you get into the book, because he's the god of lies basically, and he starts to use Inara and influencing Inara to get out of tricky situations, and I find that very frustrating. And Inara even gets annoyed with him and doesn't want anything to do with him for a bit, which I was like, yes, you tell him. But there's a very wide range of characters with lots of different traits, and again, I'm super excited to read the second one. So number 5, this was one of the scariest books that I read in 2023, and there's 2 of them. Verity and Home Before Dark were scary in their own ways. They're more of like a thrill scary, but these are horror scary. And at number 5 is Dracula by Zachary Stoker and J.D. Barker. And this is apparently what inspired the book Dracula. So when Bram Stoker actually wrote the original transcript of Dracula, he took it to a publisher and said, this story is true. This is based off things that I have experienced growing up. And the publisher basically turned around and said, no, we're not publishing that because Jack the Ripper is rampant in London and this will just terrify them even more. We will publish it if you cut certain parts out and you publish it as fiction. But he went to, clever old Bram Stoker, he went to different publishers around the world and included other parts of his original story in different transcripts that were translated from different languages. And it's just crazy. And this book focuses on Bram's childhood all the way up to the age of 21, which is present day in this book, and he's fighting off some malignant evil and a malignant being that is just it's this dude in the window here. And this book, I read it in about 2 days because it is quite a chunky book and I do have children, so it does take a while for me to read books, but I probably would have read this in a day if I could have done. Like, I was terrified. I had to sleep with the lights on, and my husband thought it was really silly, but I had to sleep with the lights on after I finished this. But it is definitely a book that I will probably read every single October and Halloween spooky season, because this scared the living daylights out of me, but it was such a good book. Number 4 is more on the lighter side of things, and this was just such a cozy wintry book, and I want to get a physical copy because I now have the second book in my physical TBR by the same author. It's not a sequel, but it is written by the same author and is based around the same things. So it is Midnight in Everwood by M.A. Kuzniar, and this is a Nutcracker retelling. The second book is a Swan Lake retelling, which I'm super excited to read. The main character is Marietta, and she wants to be a ballerina, and there's just something so childlike about it. And she gets transported, I'm not going to say the premise, but she gets transported to a magical world, and it just, I think the Nutcracker meets Narnia, like the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe vibes. Like, she walks into this land that is covered in snow and ice, and it just invokes so many childhood memories of Christmas. And I remember watching the Barbie Nutcracker when I was a little girl, and it brought back a lot of memories of that, and it was just so magical feeling like a little kid again, thinking about the Nutcracker, watching the Nutcracker as a little girl. But I haven't actually read the original Nutcracker, so that will probably be on my TBR this year if I can get a physical copy of it. But yeah, this was definitely a very magical book, and it brought back a lot of nostalgia for me, which I always like in a book. And the cover is just absolutely stunning. I mean, look at that cover, and it's all metallic and everything like that, and it just, I love an embossed metallic cover. So when I saw it, I was like, this is going to be a good book, and it did not disappoint. Number 3 is the second scariest book that I read in 2023, and again this was a book where I had to leave the lights on after, and I don't know if I can read this again because I found it that scary. The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. Now, I watched the movie and the book is nothing like the movie, and that really annoys me when they make so many changes to the film where it becomes nothing like the book. I think if you're going to make a film based off the book, you need to have a fair amount of similarities, and there was just not a lot, especially the ending. The ending in the movie was completely different to the ending here, but yeah, this was terrifying. It is very short. I think I read this in like a day and a half. Again, I probably could have read it in a day if I wanted to, but I've never been so scared. And I did read some of this in the dark, like when it was starting to get dark outside. I had all the lights on in here, but I'm honestly surprised this didn't send me into early labour, because I was pregnant when I read this and it terrified me. But it's just so, it's written so simply, but yet gives a very, very big, it gave me a very big reaction. But it's written so simply, so eloquently, and I would recommend, if anyone hasn't read a ghost story, to read this one first, because they will be terrified. But it is very short, it's a very easy read, so I would recommend this to anyone who wants to read a good little ghost story. Number 2 is The Illusions by Liz Hyder. Again, this is a book I learned from the library. This is quite a chunky book, but I absolutely loved it. So there are 2 protagonists. There's Cecily and there's Edie. Cecily is basically under the guise of a con man, but he is her mentor, and he ends up unexpectedly passing away in an accident, which Cecily thinks she caused because she has these powers that she can't seem to control. And Edie owns her own photography business, so she is into cameras, making moving pictures, which we know as videos, and she ends up meeting a magician named George. This is Edie, and George wants to use these cameras in an upcoming magic trick that he's performing, and he wants Edie to be a part of it. And Edie and Cecily, their paths end up crossing, and it's just such an empowering book about really looking within, not underestimating yourself, and just working together and becoming a little family. It was just such, it definitely had sad moments, but by God, it was such a heartwarming book. And by the end I was almost crying, because there's a little twist at the end with one of the other characters who I haven't mentioned, but it was just such a fantastic read, and I would recommend it to anyone who wants a nice little heartwarming story. And number 1, now this had to be my number 1. I could not have put it anywhere else in this list, and it was the coziest, happiest, cheeriest little book I have ever read, and that is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I adored this book. I could give this like 10 stars if I could, and I have Bookshops and Bone Dust on my physical TBR. I have a lot of sequels on my TBR, but you follow Viv, who is an orc who has decided she is done with battles and violence, and she wants to open her own little coffee shop, and she meets lots of different characters. It was just something else. I read it and I just felt like, you know, when it's really cold outside and you have like a hot drink and your whole body just warms up. That's what I felt when I was reading this. I had a physical reaction to this book, and there's not a lot of books that happens. Like, it's just, I mean, the cover is so pretty, and I have only just recently started getting into Dungeons and Dragons. My husband plays Dungeons and Dragons quite a lot, and me, my husband and our friends, just before my second son was born, we had just finished a D&D campaign, and I loved it so much. And I read this and I was just obsessed with it. But yeah, if you want a little adventure book that makes you nice and warm and fuzzy on the inside, read this. So that is my top 10 of 2023 and my first video on this channel. I'm super happy that I'm finally doing it. But yeah, I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you want to see some more. I've got some more videos that I want to film and will be coming out very soon. But let me know what your favourite book of 2023 was. Mine has to be Legends and Lattes. I can't not put it anywhere else on my list apart from number 1. But yeah, let me know what your favourite book was in the comments. And I will see you guys in the next video. Keep on reading and I'll see you later. Bye.